Good morning, everybody. Jagex just dropped a new news post, and we're going to be talking about it right now. I have not taken a peek at this at all, so this is all going to be completely fresh to me, so let's just get right into it. The future of the Ruinous powers. We recently ran a second beta for the Ruinous powers, a highly anticipated prayer book proposed as a reward for Desert Treasure 2. We intended to run this beta until Wednesday, but we've made the difficult decision to end the beta early and shelve the Ruinous powers. Today, we'd like to cover the reasons as to why and inform you of the future of the Ruinous powers or additions to Prayer and Old School. Holy shit, okay. Holy moly. If you're not interested in reading the full blog, we put together a TLDR for you, but if you'd like to see us expand on our rationale and even dive a little deeper into topics like power creep, then read on. Many players feel like the Ruinous powers are effectively just standard prayers with some slightly tweaked numbers. We don't get the sense that many players are excited for them in the way you'd expect players to be excited for a power increase like this. For similar reasons, the Ruinous powers we have now don't really match up with our initial vision for the prayer book. While power creep isn't inherently bad, this iteration of the new prayers feels like power creep for the sake of it rather than anything that's solving new problems. We didn't properly anticipate the volume of work required to deliver on the community's desire for new prayers properly. With all that we know now, we'd approach the subject with a similar level of attention to detail and communication as we have with sailing and the new skill process. We'd rather not risk sacrificing the quality of everything else that makes up Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire, this close to release. We're still open to suggestions of adding prayers that do things players were excited about. For example, mixing things up significantly in PvP to the standard prayer book. If that's something more players would like to see us explore. Oh, my bad. Period. This isn't us closing the door on new prayers, new prayer books, or other additions to prayer entirely, and we'll let you know when the time feels right to have these conversations again. Holy moly. Okay, this is actually insane. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper, as they stated. Just my initial thoughts. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful. I'm just so glad they've just decided to scrap this. This is obviously I have been basically not... I try to be very open-minded with most things in this game. I really do try to. And by the way, just like a little point based on the last ramble, I think... I confused a lot of my audience, and I probably didn't speak very well. Usually when I make a ramble, then I'll get the comments, and of course, it's a ramble. It was a pre-recorded thing, so like I can't just address it right then and there. So people get like the wrong idea of, the things I was talking about. So I am not against updates at all. I just want to make that very clear. I am completely pro updates. I think bringing new life into this game is fantastic. I think doing it in a good old school thematic way is the way we should be doing it, and balancing and making sure the health of the game is the top priority and keeping old school. So I could continue down that rabbit hole, but we're going to continue with this blog. But my thoughts on the prayer book was I will try to just accept it and enjoy it if it were to have come out. And you know what? I would have just been like, this is what old school is now. And, at 80% of bosses, most likely, you're going to be using this an entirely new prayer book that feels very similar to the old one. But like Jagex stated, it really just does feel like power creep for the sake of power creep. Now, the original prayer book wasn't exactly what it is right now that they've closed the beta. They've made a ton of different changes because so many things around the game have been completely... We've designed metas around this standard prayer book for like 2 decades. And so trying to completely remake a prayer book is very, very difficult because there's so many metas that are involved in so many places, just like the tightrope skip, for example. Like that's just like a really easy example to throw out, but it's like you basically, if you don't have a redemption style prayer, then it's almost not even worth going into CM, like doing a solo CM without the normal prayer book. It's like it's just very awkward, and so it ends up looking almost identical to the standard prayer book, just so we have all the quality of life and all the specialty prayers that we need for the content that we have all kind of adapted to. Okay, so I am excited though that they've just decided to scrap it. Let's continue to see what they've said. Our first mention of Old School's first ever new prayer book came over half a year ago alongside 2022's Winter Summit, where we said this: Now, it's still a bit too early to go into specifics, but we can tell you that we plan to work with the community to devise a powerful new set of prayers. You'll have to weigh up the familiarity of the prayers you know and love against the thrill of tapping into forces best left forgotten. In the months since we combed through hundreds of player suggestions, numerous iterations of the Ruinous powers, added, removed, and reworked prayers, and spent somewhere in the region of 12,000 words trying to communicate them across various blogs during community consultation. All of this with one goal in mind, to try and create an exciting, unique set of prayers that would complement existing and new methods without outright replacing the much-loved standard prayer book. In pursuit of offering a prayer book we believe you're happy with, we feel as though the initial vision has fallen to the wayside and that what we set out to make isn't something we've been able to achieve, despite our efforts to realize something special. We know that the idea of a new prayer book, new prayers, or fresh ways to engage with combat in old school is something players have been keen on us exploring for a long time, and felt that thematically, Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire was the perfect time for us to start exploring these concepts. You made your opinion very clear that you wanted us to explore adding a new prayer book, with the green light pole passing with flying colors. However, many players point out that the considerable overlap between the Ruinous powers and the standard prayers boils down what started as something intending to feel like a choice and a trade-off to, if you're comfortable with the content, you should always use the Ruinous powers. In essence, we're left with what is effectively an improved version of a standard prayer book, where you gain a sizable amount of power at the expense of taking a little extra damage from time to time. Now, why exactly is this a problem, especially if it's something you are happy with? In the interest of full transparency, we're reasonably confident that the current iteration of Ruinous powers would pass a poll, though we are aware that many of you out there feel like they shouldn't be added in the game in their current form. For us as a team, we're not at all confident that they're the right fit for old school, and we'd like to explain why. Power creep in old school. Firstly, we need to talk about power creep. For the uninitiated, power creep is a term used across a variety of games and often refers to the ways in which new content additions can increase player power over time to the point where older content becomes devalued or obsolete. In old school terms, Torva is an example of power creep since it's objectively better than Bandos, the previous best in slot melee armor, in every way, except for looks. But yeah, while Torva remains more expensive and harder to obtain, if you're a player who has no issues forking out the necessary cash, there's no reason for you to use Bandos if you own Torva, and that's power creep in a somewhat simplified nutshell. While it's often viewed in a negative light, we believe that power creep to some degree is ultimately a necessity. It matters to players that content is sufficiently rewarding. After all, would old school players in 2023 spend time killing a boss that doesn't give them something they want? Content needs to have a purpose for players that dedicate time to beating challenges. Worthwhile rewards are the reason players choose to do content, and so to make rewards worthwhile. Power creep over time is necessary. Additionally, it's exciting. It can feel to come back to the game and chase a powerful new reward like Tumakin's Shadow and put it to use as familiar content to let you enjoy content in a new way. For the most part, we tried to be pretty conservative when it comes to player power and try to avoid needlessly pushing it higher. To add to that, we're generally only able to push power creep at a pace that players are happy with anyway, due to the way we pull rewards. It's worth keeping in mind that sometimes things just sound cool, and many players feel inclined to vote yes, even in cases where the cool thing isn't healthy for the game long term. And to some degree, it's on us to keep this in check and just not offer things we feel will damage the game long term. When it comes to taking a conservative approach, these are two things we try to bear in mind above all else. We don't want to harm the value of equipment where possible, and two, look to utilize horizontal progression and niche weapons to fill in gaps and new players and help players overcome obstacles that already exist. Let's dive deeper into the first of those points around the idea of devaluing equipment. The prime reason we keep this in mind is that for many players, for better or for worse, power creep isn't as much of a concern as losing value on items they already own, where players can feel like they've been cheated out of wealth or time spent for reasons beyond their control. One approach we've taken to this in the past is combo items, like the Torva example we provided earlier, or Masori. This tends to work pretty well for maintaining the value of items that have been knocked down a peg on the best in slot list, but at times can feel like a band-aid fix if it's not thematically appropriate. Combo items aren't the only solution to this. Take a second to think about Torva if it didn't require Bandosian components in some way. Would Bandos chestplates and tacits absolutely plummet? The answer is likely no. Bandos is much more attainable for players, mains, and irons alike than Torva, whose increased cost and rarity gives it a power progression since players need to earn more GP to upgrade. However, relying on price alone as a means to achieve power progression is tricky to get right because of the various factors to play, like drop rates, the value of GP over time, or other economic concerns. For example, has new content come out where a certain item is best in slot? And as a result, is harder to balance around when designing new, powerful rewards. Outside of monetary concerns, the value of items can be affected by various other factors too. Is it an iconic item? Does it have heavy tie-ins to nostalgia? Or is it simply a status symbol? They all play a role in determining the value to players. While many items exist where the input is solely gold, items like Barrow's Gloves or the Inferno Cape represent, they just call it the Inferno Cape? Come on, bruh. Represent milestones for players, and their time spent shouldn't feel like it's been needlessly undermined. This one's more of a point around player psychology than specifically about game health, but it's still something we keep in mind since it impacts your enjoyment and journey as a player. The second point is somewhat related to the first, but focuses on the idea of horizontal progression. This means progressing sideways by introducing new ways to overcome some problems rather than introducing new ways to overcome all problems. Something like the Dragon Hunter Lance is a prime example, where rather than saying, here's a better whip, we say, here's something new to use at a handful of places. This is a way for us to give players items with utility that isn't so niche that it feels useless, while also not being so broad that it's devaluing your other gear in a major way. Arguably, the best example of this in old school spellbooks, where all of them have separate niches and use cases without one absolutely dominating all the others in every situation. The tricky thing here is these horizontal options still need to feel worthwhile. It can be difficult to make niche rewards feel good if you don't really care about the niche it's filling. If Ulm and Vorkath didn't exist, would it still be worth your time to chase a Hydra Claw or worth your GP to buy a Dragon Hunter Lance? Despite all of the above, sometimes there is a need for vertical progression too. While horizontal progression moves sideways and focuses on obtaining new niche items with niche functions, vertical progression is moving upwards and outright upgrading. Weapons like the Scythe of Viter, Twisted Bow, Tumican Shadow, Blade of Saildor, or Grazi Rapier are prime examples of times we've crept power upwards. The trick with vertical progression is that we need to pick when and where to proceed upwards very carefully, ensuring rewards have a clear purpose and feel like a fair output for your time input. Ultimately, rewards drive people to engage with content, and power increases drive people to chase rewards. While it's easy enough for us to offer rewards that encourage people to engage with content, there are times when this is at odds with the long-term health of the game. As an example, if Guardians of the Rift resulted in earning 1 million runecrafting XP per hour, then it would probably be even more popular than it already is, but would likely prove damaging to the wider game. So how exactly do the Ruinous powers tie into this? At present, these prayers are extremely potent as a DPS upgrade in all styles across the board. And while the limited defensive bonuses is a drawback, their effective power is an extreme example of vertical progression, since for many players, these Ruinous powers will wholly replace the standard prayer book. Vertical progression isn't inherently bad, but it needs to be done properly. Over the last 18 months, we've released Torva, Masori, and Tumican Shadow to name but a few, and power has been creeping up at a higher rate than usual. We don't feel like now is the right time to be moving power upwards across the board in the way that the Ruinous powers are. And we want to safeguard against power creep like this until more content in the game exists that really warrants raising the bar quite this much. Additionally, for a power increase like this, it doesn't feel as though many players are particularly excited by the prayers, as opposed to being unopposed to their inclusion. If power is going to increase, we'd like to deliver in a way that actually excites players. And that's not something we feel Ruinous powers are doing right now. The future of Ruinous powers. Having said all that, we know many of you will be asking, why not just poll it and let us decide? and we'd like to expand further. When approaching Desert Treasure 2, The Fallen Empire, in particular the Ruinous powers, for the first time, we wanted to bring to life something with a lot of potential and that ultimately felt special. We don't feel as though we properly anticipated and appreciated exactly how much time, the volume of consultation, and the amount of back and forth required to properly deliver on our initial vision for Old School's first ever new prayer book. For us as a team, juggling everything that the Ruinous powers needs to be fully realized alongside 4 new bosses, the other rewards, and all the time spent writing and designing Old School's most ambitious quest to date is extremely difficult. Making any content of this scale is extremely resource intensive, and as it stands, we don't have the resource to deliver on our vision for the Ruinous powers without the quality of the quest suffering as a result. We feel like compromising on the quality of everything else the quest entails in order to pursue the perfect prayer book isn't the right call to make, especially when many players and we as a team aren't confident in their design or how the design lines up with our goals. Moving forwards, we know that to approach a new prayer book properly, it needs to be a project all of its own with the same level of attention to detail as something like a new skill, rather than being tackled as a single part of another project, which is already incredibly ambitious in scope. As such, we will not be progressing further with the Ruinous Powers prayer book. This decision isn't an easy one to make, and it's absolutely not one that we've made lightly, but it is a decision that we feel is best for Old School right now and long term. We understand that for many of you, this isn't likely what you were hoping to read, especially with some of the things on offer that people were looking forward to, like resolving PVM with a new set of prayers and adjusting setups, chasing new PBs and world records, or perhaps the meta shakeups in PvP and brackets with limited defense. We fully appreciate that there are some exciting avenues offered by the Ruinous powers, but feel that we'll be able to do a much better job of delivering the same feeling of excitement in a future project where we can pay more attention to detail, taking everything we've learned so far and putting it into practice to make something significantly better for players of all sorts. That is to say that this is by no means us shutting the door on future experimentation and additions to prayers. Instead, it's us thinking back at where we started, where we've wound up, how we got here, and how we think we could do a much better job to serve Old School and its players properly with longevity and excitement in mind. Beautifully put. Obviously this is what I wanted to see personally, and I do, like Jagex said, like just as they understand, I understand players. There's a lot of players that wanted these new prayer books, this new prayer book. Almost every morning when Scotty's live, he's the world record holder of the Inferno, for those that don't know. Like, I've been loving watching his streams, and I've been loving him use the Ruinous powers in the beta. I've loved watching No Monkey. I've loved watching Mulgoat Kirby sending these with these prayer books, and they're very excited for the new prayers. And this has probably got to come as pretty depressing for them and for a lot of others that I haven't mentioned, and a lot of people that aren't content creators that have been enjoying messing around with the new prayer book. So I am still like totally eventually, like I do think a new prayer book eventually could fit in Old School. It's just, I don't know. I could make an entirely new ramble talking about, you know, prayer book in general, but I really do think, and I think we can all kind of agree on this, that it really was just the standard prayer book knocked up a little bit. Knocked up? What am I trying to say? Just leveled up a little bit, you know? So it was just, I don't know. It just didn't, it felt weird. So anyway, I'm happy with this. I'm glad Jagex has kind of just made a decision like this for the health of the game, because I am in agreement. I know not everyone's going to be in agreement with that, but I am. And I really appreciate their transparency about this. So anyway, yeah, let me know down in the comments, guys, what your guys' thoughts are on this. Are you guys butthurt that this is being scrapped? Are you guys excited? It's interesting because just yesterday on stream, I was talking about, like, I was sending these like Twitch polls, you know, obviously with a tiny little sample size of my stream, but nobody was really saying they were going to vote yes to this anyway. It seemed, and again, very low sample size. And it's probably, you know, just me not wanting it. And then people are like, oh yeah, like the streamer's always right, you know, and so they're voting no to it. But anyway, so it does seem like the almost, I can't even say the majority, but it did seem like a vast number of players didn't actually want this in the game. So anyway, yeah, let me know down in the comments. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. And I think Desert Treasure 2 will still be a successful release, even if it is just the rings and the new little armor and weapon or whatever whatever those other things are coming out. Ruinous Powers has completely over dominated everything. But you know what? One thing I hope they don't take away. Oh, it looks like they haven't. They haven't taken away prayer reordering yet. So, or wait, did they say that? I forgot. Did they say that? We intended. Oh, okay. So the beta is shelved. It looks like, right? Is that what it means? Is it completely shelved right now? Yeah, I think it is. I think so, unless I'm just blind. So it looks like. Oh wait, whoa! There it is. Wait, no. Where did I just see that? Desert Treasure 2 rewards beta. Okay, so it still is up. I wonder if they're going to keep up the prayer reordering. If they get rid of that, I'll say bring back Ruinous Powers. Oh my God, no, bring it back. No, please, Jagex, keep prayer reordering. This is way too good. It's way too good. It's made LMS actually very enjoyable and bearable. It's just nice. Please keep this for old time's sake, right? Please don't take this away. Yeah, you know what? I know I've already mentioned this, but it would be okay if they added, and it doesn't need to be for Desert Treasure 2 because I know it's coming up really, really quickly, but I'm not opposed to adding we have 6 more slots for prayers. After Augury, which is level 77, by the way, we literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more slots for new prayers being added in the future. So we don't need to completely, add a new prayer book. We do have a little bit of room on the standard prayer book still to be utilized. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. I'm curious what you guys have to say. Follow me down in the description on Twitch and Twitter if you guys are interested in keeping up to date with more of my content. And also, all of these rambles are on Spotify and other podcasting platforms. So go check out the Spotify link down in the description as well. Be sure to add that to your favorite podcast player. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later. Peace.